Hi everyone, today I'm going to show you how to paint this. Alright, so let's start by creating a new canvas. Give it a good size and a good resolution depending on whether you wish to print it or just share it on the web. 9 inches by 4.5 inches at 300 pixels per inch, that should do. Give your canvas a nice gradient, a texture for now, just to avoid staring at a white screen. Then begin by drawing simple anatomy. For this tutorial, I wanted to design a monster. It's a cross between a rhino beetle, and a dinosaur. You can rotate the canvas to get a good angle when drawing on a tablet. For now, I'm just sketching quick lines. Basically, the way I do this is that on each layer, I make a plan for the next layer, and then I lower the opacity, and then I paint a more detailed version of the previous layer. Every image is comprised of 4 aspects: shape, edge, color, value. So you want to work these 4 in separation. As far as the shapes are concerned, you have to pay attention to the correct geometry and composition. Now, the good thing about Photoshop is that you can cut things out and put them somewhere else afterwards, so nothing really is carved in stone. So you can move your drawing later and put it where it should belong in your composition. Composition is the most important thing of a drawing. If you're a beginner, I strongly suggest studying composition principles, and I plan on doing tutorials on that specifically. The thing about composition is that sometimes if you're thinking too much about your composition and how things stand on your image, then that can paralyze you. If you're focused too much on composition, that can hinder your creativity. The way I did this is that I painted the creature as I was seeing it. I was seeing 2 views and I wasn't sure exactly which one I was gonna pick. And I didn't really care about composition at this point because I can move it later on. But had I been really focused on composition, then I might have not had focus on the design so much of the character. Drawing takes so many things into account, so it's good to simplify as much as we can and focus on one component at a time. Yeah, I mean, I can see the comments take a shot every time he says composition. But then again, the more I cram the word composition in your head, the more you're going to think about composition when you're drawing. So at this point, I decided that I like this view better than the other one, and I decided that I wanted to expand on that view. I like drawing out a horizon line because that helps me situate my drawing inside of space. I like to go back and forth between the mirror version of my drawing. This way I get a fresh view of it, and it helps me to catch inaccuracies of geometry or composition. Right now I'm just adding more and more complexity to the drawing. And also I put myself a few perspective guidelines to help me situate my drawing in space. So how many layers you're going to use to refine your drawing? Well, that's really up to you. You're actually not required to do any. Like if you look other tutorials by people who have years and years and years of experience drawing, you're going to notice that they tend to skip steps. The thing is that they don't necessarily skip steps. It's just that they have the tendency to do multiple steps at the same time because they have so much experience drawing that with a single paint stroke, they're able to lay out accurate color, accurate values, and have an interesting shape that fits nicely within the composition. But for us common mortals, we have to think things through. Therefore, it's going to take as many layers as needed for us to understand what we're drawing, because drawing is all about understanding shape, understanding anatomy, understanding perspective, understanding composition. So speaking about composition, this is the time in my painting that I decided to really focus on composition. Now I do have a lot of the anatomy and a lot of the geometry laid out, but as you notice, I can move these around. This shape right here, this is called the Fibonacci spiral. Now, I'm not gonna get all spiritual and esoteric about it, but simply put, everything in our universe grows according to patterns. And a lot of the ratios between things in our universe are according to this exact spiral. Straight angles are not pleasant to the eye because you have to shift your viewing 90 degrees. So ideally you want things to follow a curve. And the Fibonacci spiral, that's the smoothest curve there can be. This makes the spiral pleasant to the eye, and it also ensures that we follow the rules of thirds. Now, as you can notice, I got pretty lucky. The hand and the feet of my creature, they all fall in that spiral. And also the composition lines, I made them stand out so that I can clearly see how the viewer's eye is guided throughout the composition. The goal of the composition is to attract the viewer's eye into the composition and guide it through the whole composition. One of these days I'm planning on making a video specifically on the Fibonacci spiral and its use in art. Now you can draw as much as you want and everything falls into place. You can tweak the underlying anatomy a little bit to make it right. Practice with drawing hands comes in handy. Every artist has their own way of using lines to describe curvature and shapes. Here I noticed a small inaccuracy in the eye, so I decided to fix it before it's too late. Flipping the canvas is a bit like looking at drawing in the mirror. The thing about it is that over time we're used to seeing our image, so our brains correct the mistakes for us, but the mistakes are still on the drawing. And flipping it or looking at a mirrored view of it allows our brains to see it differently and to spot all the mistakes in it. As far as the shell on the back of the creature is concerned, I made some guidelines that resemble a 3D mesh. This way I can understand the geometry better. With regards to composition, if the viewer's eyes fall in the top of the image, then they're gonna see the tail. And the tail is a visual element that the eye will have a tendency to follow, which will then in turn lead it to the rest of the creature. Then once the eye sees all the creature, then everything's gonna lead to the face, which is the main selling point of this creature. Thus, it's the area that should have the most detail and the most focus. The spikes, there are a design element. The purpose of the spikes is to give my creature the same feeling as the feeling you get when you look at the Ankylosaurus that dinosaur with a mace on its tail, but also they serve to provide a sense of volume to the shell. Here the geometry is not very clear, so I decided to help myself by just doing a basic underlying structure to better understand what shape it has. Imagine a video game concept where a mad scientist or whatever, he discovers how to mix genes of different animals. So he mixes bugs with dinosaurs, with large mammals, and that actually has the potential for a lot of monsters that would have really interesting features, but also it would kind of make sense on the premise that this genetic technology exists in that fictional world, not so distant from ours, to make the whole scenario believable. The intention is to design a creature that has some viable prospects for making it into a video game or a movie. Now that I think of it, it would be a bit of a knockoff to Jurassic Park. But really, is any new idea new? Here I noticed that there's something really crooked about the horn on the other side of his head, so I decided to draw more guidelines. to help me better understand the shape and what size it would have in 3D space with this perspective. How much of it is going to be hidden behind the head, how much is going to stick out, and where. And now for the painting part. I adjusted my background to be dark. Now you give your main selling point, which is this creature, a perfectly flat color. Now that your drawing has a base color, this base color allows it to stand out from the background in order to achieve contrast. But also the good thing with Photoshop, with this method, once your shape has a base color on a separate layer, you can make a selection from it. And once you have a base color, you can start painting in the shadows. I like to keep backups of my step and duplicating my layers to ensure I can go back if I make mistakes, and I can also merge the drawing with that base layer. I fast forwarded the painting part because I wanted this tutorial to focus mainly on the drawing part. I will dedicate future tutorials to the painting, to color theory, theory about lighting, Generally speaking, it's always a good idea to give a shadow underneath whatever it is that you're drawing. This way it allows it to stand on something, to exist in space and not just float around in empty space. But at this point I figured it'd be kind of cool to give it a background, paint the scenery with mountains. Now the scenery might look impressive, but it's actually quite easy to do. The reason for that is that rocks and mountains and geological formations, they don't have such strict geometries. There are ways in which rock formations form, but it's not as precise as the anatomy of an arm or a face, for example. That makes them a lot easier to draw. Well, that's it for me for this tutorial. Now, what you're gonna paint, that's up to you. If you found this video helpful and enjoyable to watch, please do share it with your friends and give it a like. Thank you very much. Have a great day. See you soon with more of these.